I'm a killer. Killing is my business, and business is good.
It was a calm summer night in June 1992 when 18-year-old Katie Ratcliffe decided to walk home alone after leaving a local club in Camberley, Surrey. She had been feeling emotional and thought some fresh air might help. But as she walked down the quiet street, a car pulled up, and inside was a group of strangers. Among them was a young girl, barely 12 years old, whose innocent smile hid something far darker. What happened next was something no one could have imagined. The crime was so shocking that it left the entire country stunned, and the identity of the person responsible made it even more unbelievable. How could someone so young commit such a horrific act? What led her down such a dark path? Join us as we dive into one of the most chilling stories in Britain's history. The case of Sharon Carr. Sharon Carr was born on December 21, 1979, in Belize, a small coastal country in Central America that was still a British colony at the time. She was raised by her mother, Molly, whose last name remains unknown. Sharon grew up with three siblings, each of whom had a different father, leaving her uncertain about her own biological father. Reports suggest that in the early 1980s, Molly met George Carr, a Jamaican soldier stationed in Belize with the British Army. Their romance quickly blossomed, leading to marriage. However, the family lived in poverty, often struggling to put food on the table. Alongside financial hardships, Sharon's early years were marked by a household filled with conflict and abuse. George reportedly drank heavily and turned violent when intoxicated, often directing his anger toward Molly and the children. Molly herself was said to be aggressive, frequently venting her frustrations on her young children. Sharon later claimed that her mother subjected her to severe beatings and even inflicted burns upon her. In 1986, in search of a better life, the Carr family relocated to England and settled in a public housing complex in Camberley, Surrey. Sharon began attending the local primary school, where teachers initially described her as polite, sociable, and helpful. However, beneath this innocent exterior lay a troubled child. Signs of aggression began to surface as Sharon befriended older peers who negatively influenced her. These new friends introduced her to cannabis and encouraged her to engage in theft and drug dealing. Her behavior grew increasingly concerning. She developed an interest in weapons and started carrying a sharp object in her school bag. As her attitude worsened, Sharon became rebellious and disrespectful, frequently disrupting classes and seeking attention. The tension at home reached a breaking point when George decided to leave the family. Molly, enraged by his decision, poured boiling oil on him during a heated argument. Both sustained severe burns and required hospitalization. Following this violent incident, Sharon shocked police by calmly defending her mother's actions, appearing unfazed by the domestic chaos she had witnessed. Molly was later charged with assault and ordered to undergo therapy, and the couple divorced. By 1990, Sharon, then just 11 years old, had become unmanageable at school. Authorities intervened, placing her in foster care for nearly a month. When she returned home, she discovered that Molly had begun dating a laborer with two daughters from a previous relationship. The man soon moved in with them. Around this time, Sharon entered secondary school, and for a brief period life seemed to stabilize. She even joined the school basketball team, giving her teachers hope. However, this relative calm was deceptive. Beneath the surface, Sharon's personality was deeply influenced by her turbulent childhood and her mother's disturbing beliefs. Molly, claiming to have supernatural abilities, introduced Sharon to voodoo practices, including animal sacrifices. Sharon began using these rituals to manipulate those around her, reciting incantations and threats to instill fear and exert control over others. Sharon's descent into darkness took a chilling turn when she reportedly delved into the world of black magic, leading her to commit heinous acts of cruelty against animals. Later, court records detail how she took pleasure in torturing cats with sharp objects. In one confession, she admitted to killing a neighbor's dog and using a shovel to split its body in two. Disturbing accounts also claim she once told a friend about throwing live hamsters into boiling oil. Shockingly, these horrifying actions went unnoticed by the adults in her life. With no one to stop her, Sharon's violent tendencies escalated. She moved from animals to humans, fulfilling her darkest fantasies. On the evening of June 6, 1992, 12-year-old Sharon was hanging out with her usual group of friends. By the early hours of June 7th, the group had parked their vehicle on the outskirts of Camberley. Whether they were there by chance or waiting for a target remains unclear, but what's certain is that they soon encountered 18-year-old Katie Ratcliffe. Katie, a hairdresser with dreams of opening her own salon, had left home earlier that night after assuring her parents, Joseph and Helen Ratcliffe, that she would return. Katie was heartbroken from a recent breakup and had reluctantly gone out with friends to lift her spirits. The night took a turn for the worse when she ran into her ex-boyfriend at the club, stirring up fresh pain. Upset and on the verge of tears, Katie decided to leave abruptly, declining offers for a taxi or an escort home. As she walked alone along the quiet street, she crossed paths with Sharon and her group, who offered her a ride. Katie, reassured by Sharon's youthful appearance, accepted the offer, unknowingly stepping into a nightmare. An hour later, children playing near a cemetery wall discovered Katie's lifeless body. She was naked with multiple stab wounds, including injuries to her private areas. While there were no clear signs of sexual assault, the police awaited autopsy results for confirmation. Katie's body was transported to the local morgue, where her devastated parents identified her. The brutality of the crime led investigators to suspect a sexually motivated attack by an adult male. Police profiled the killer as someone in his 20s or 30s. Over 500 men were questioned, including Katie's ex-boyfriend and the young men she had spent the evening with, but no leads emerged. Katie's ex expressed deep regret, stating that if he had taken her home, she might still be alive. The forensic report revealed around 30 stab wounds inflicted by a 15-centimeter blade, with injuries to the ribs, heart, and genital area. Some of Katie's jewelry and personal belongings were missing. Authorities were baffled as to why her body was found in a neighboring town when she was last seen in Camberley. With no evidence or leads, the investigation hit a dead end until a shocking attack 2 years later unraveled the truth. On June 7, 1994, exactly 2 years after Katie's murder, Anne Marie Clifford, a 13-year-old student at Collingwood School in Surrey, was brutally attacked in the school bathroom. The assailant was none other than Sharon. Armed with a sharp object, Sharon stabbed Anne Marie multiple times, puncturing her lung and nearly killing her. The attack was interrupted by 5 students who entered the bathroom and stopped Sharon. During questioning, Sharon admitted to torturing animals and confessed to killing the neighbor's dog with a shovel. Shocked by her revelations, authorities sent her for a psychological evaluation. While in the mental health facility, Sharon attacked 2 staff members attempting to strangle them. In December 1994, she was convicted of assaulting Anne Marie and was sentenced to 2 years in detention. She was moved between psychiatric units, where her violent behavior continued, prompting authorities to transfer her to the male section of a secure center in Durham. In September 1995, Sharon was moved to Bullwood Hall, a facility for young offenders. Staff there were trained to handle her violent and sexualized behavior. It was during her time at Bullwood Hall that the truth about Katie's murder began to surface. Sharon bragged to fellow inmates and their families about the killing, describing it in chilling detail. She also documented the crime in journals she kept in her cell. In January 1996, Sharon confided in a prison guard she had developed feelings for, revealing what she had done to Katie. This confession, combined with her writings, finally provided investigators with the breakthrough they needed to connect Sharon to the horrific crime that had haunted Katie's family for years. The law enforcement officer immediately notified the police, who confiscated Sharon's journals and drawings. What they uncovered in those notebooks was shocking and deeply disturbing. Sharon had meticulously documented the horrifying details of her attack on 18-year-old Katie, vividly describing the pleasure she derived from causing harm. Among her writings, she included sketches of the murder weapon and chillingly detailed how she plunged the blade into Katie's chest. She recounted watching Katie struggle to breathe, observing every moment as her life slowly slipped away. Sharon wrote that, although she did not initially want to harm Katie, she felt compelled to act violently, stripping her victim of grace, peace, and safety. The diary also revealed the sexual undertones of the crime. Sharon described how Katie's screams gave her a twisted sense of excitement. This revelation shed new light on the brutal injuries inflicted on Katie's genital area, initially leading investigators to believe the perpetrator was a man. In another passage, Sharon claimed that she frequently saw the devil in her dreams and, sometimes, in her mirror, only to realize it was her own reflection. These confessions, combined with leaked details of the crime, led the media to dub her the Devil's Daughter. What particularly alarmed authorities was the introduction in Sharon's journal, where she brazenly proclaimed herself a criminal. She wrote, "Taking lives is my business, and business is good." During a grueling 20-hour interrogation, Sharon gave varying accounts of the events. However, one consistent detail was her admission to stabbing Katie multiple times with a sharp object. In 2 versions of her story, she claimed to have been in a car with 2 friends during the attack. She also alleged that they had intimate relations with Katie before disposing of her body. Sharon identified the 2 individuals, but when questioned, they provided alibis and were excluded from the investigation. Despite this, doubts lingered about their potential involvement, as the prosecution struggled to explain how a 12-year-old girl could have dragged Katie, who weighed 90 pounds, to the location where her body was discovered. Based on her confessions and the evidence in her journals, Sharon was charged with murder. The trial began in early 1997 at Winchester Crown Court. After 4 weeks of proceedings, Sharon Carr, by then 17 years old, was found guilty, becoming the youngest individual in Britain to be convicted of murder. Although Mary Bell had been convicted at age 11 for her involvement in the deaths of two children in 1968, her charge had been manslaughter, not murder. We have also covered Mary Bell's case. If you want to watch that story, I will leave the link in the description. Sharon's conviction made headlines, and her demeanor in court shocked onlookers. She smirked as the verdict was read and maintained the same mocking smile as she was escorted from the courtroom to the prison, where she awaited sentencing. On March 25, 1997, she was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 14 years before being eligible for parole. The presiding judge described her as an extremely dangerous individual. In June 1998, under the Mental Health Act, Sharon was transferred to a psychiatric hospital where she was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. She remained there until the facility transitioned to a men-only hospital, at which point she was relocated to a secure hospital in London. In 1999, a request to reduce her minimum sentence to 12 years was denied, keeping the original 14-year minimum intact. During her time at Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital, she met another inmate, Robert Lane, who was institutionalized for murdering his mother. The two began a supervised relationship, with their visits limited to 1 hour, during which they were only allowed to kiss and hug. In 2001, they announced their engagement, and the media reported that their wedding was planned for late August in the chapel of a secure hospital. At 21 and 24 years old, respectively, Sharon and Robert were to be escorted by guards during a brief ceremony officiated by the hospital chaplain, with about 20 other inmates expected to attend. However, despite having already selected their wedding rings, the couple abruptly called off the engagement. Sources suggest that their decision came after reading a detailed press article about their crimes. The article recounted how, at 17, Robert had attacked his mother, stabbing her 29 times, striking her face with a carpet beater, and gouging out her eyes. His actions were reportedly fueled by resentment, as he believed his mother favored his sister over him. Both Sharon and Robert were allegedly so shocked and disgusted by the brutal details of each other's crimes that they ended their relationship immediately and ceased all communication. On October 17, 2003, Sharon's minimum sentence was reviewed but ended up being upheld. However, on December 10th of the same year, the same judge revisited the case and recommended reducing her minimum sentence to 12 years. This decision deeply upset Katie's family, who expressed their outrage to the media. Katie's father, Joseph, stated that the woman responsible for his daughter's death should spend the rest of her life in prison, convinced she would pose a danger to others if released. Each appeal for parole faced fierce opposition, not only from Katie's family but also from the investigating officers, civil organizations, and specialists who had assessed Sharon and deemed her a continuing threat. In 2004, her lawyers contested the 14-year minimum, arguing for a manslaughter conviction based on diminished responsibility. The motion was denied. In 2007, Sharon was moved to the Orchard Unit, a medium security facility. However, in 2015, she was transferred to a high-security women's prison near Ashford, Surrey, after being deemed a risk to both staff and inmates. According to her transfer order, her condition had become unmanageable, and no effective treatment could be provided. In 2018, Sharon was briefly moved to a less secure prison, but in August 2019, she was returned to maximum security following a violent altercation with another inmate. Reports from supervisors highlighted Sharon's continued volatile behavior and paranoid tendencies. She was considered too unstable for release, and her request to downgrade her restricted prisoner status was denied. In March 2020, she petitioned for another status change, but the request was again rejected. The ruling judge noted that Sharon had expressed thoughts of harming another inmate, including plans to strike her with a jar and push her down a staircase. These factors solidified the decision that she remained a public danger and should remain incarcerated. In September 2022, it was announced that her case would again be reviewed by a parole board. At 42 years old, Sharon remained behind bars, despite having served the minimum 14 years. However, as she was serving a life sentence, there was no obligation for her to be released. During this review, she sought either full release or transfer to an open prison. The hearing took place in October, but no records of the outcome were found, and Sharon remained in maximum security. The case made headlines again in August 2023 as reports surfaced that Sharon, dubbed the Devil's Daughter, could potentially be freed after 31 years since the murder of Katie. However, her parole request was once again denied after experts rigorously evaluated her case and argued that she continued to pose a threat to society. Judicial records revealed that, since her arrest, Sharon had spent only 8 years in standard prison settings, with the rest of her time spent in specialized, secure environments. While her file documented some progress, such as participation in educational programs, work activities, and even mentoring other inmates, experts noted that her underlying risk factors had not changed. They emphasized her tendency to form intense emotional attachments and her disproportionate reactions to perceived rejection. As of November 2024, Sharon Carr, now 45, remained incarcerated at Bronzefield Prison in Ashford, with no scheduled date for her next case review. More than 3 decades after her horrific crime, she is still remembered as one of the most unusual female criminals in history. Experts note that it is exceptionally rare for women to kill strangers, making the case of a 12-year-old girl targeting an adult woman particularly unique. They also highlighted that female killers typically use just enough force to end their victim's life. It is almost unheard of for women to inflict multiple stab wounds or cause injuries to a victim's genital area, behavior far more characteristic of male offenders. Sharon's depraved actions not only inflicted unimaginable pain on Katie's family, but also left a deep scar on British society. Even today, there is debate about whether Sharon was inherently destined for a life of crime, as she claimed in her diaries, or if her actions were shaped by the violent and loveless environment in which she grew up. What do you think? Should Sharon remain imprisoned, or does she deserve a chance at freedom? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.